At this point, every information portal is saturated with mindfulness content. But this show is a unique, unusual, curious take on mindfulness. Some of what you hear will be completely new to you. Let's dive in and take a look at the nature of the aware mind. I invite you to deepen your awareness so that you may be liberated and inspired. I'm Sarah Vallely, professional coach. I help people overcome anxiety, heal from past trauma, improve their relationships, and maintain better work-life balance. Welcome to the Aware Mind. I'm here with Emelda De Coteau, and she is a writer and wellness entrepreneur. And she's also one of my students and working in my coaching program and is coaching others in a wellness way and really helping them find calm and peace in this crazy, crazy world that we live in. I'm so excited to talk to you, E. E's her nickname.
I'm so happy to be here, Sarah, and I am so blessed to have been in your program and to still continue to learn from you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You've done so well. Erica, one of your recent clients, she works in social work, has a lot of stress, works long hours, overwhelm, burnout, and also is dealing with some IBS issues.
So often when we think about mindfulness, people's perception is that you have to have like 20 or 30 minutes a day, and that's just not realistic for a lot of people. And this is the case with Erica. So what we really dived into is what 1 to 2 minute mindfulness exercises can we begin to use that she can incorporate into her day so that she's not overwhelmed. Because the point is to be consistent. Because if you start with this lofty goal of 20 to 30 minutes and then you're not able to do it, you get deflated and, you're not able to keep it up. One of the first things that I introduced her to in our sessions was this focus on 1 minute mindfulness exercises. And there was one that she particularly loved, and I've had a few clients who really like this, is just being able to sit and connect with the breath, because she's getting stressed from her job. And it's the kind of job where you clock in early in the morning, but she was working until much later in the evening and didn't really have a sense of a well-being schedule, if you will. The other thing that we did that's falls under the short mindfulness exercises was the attention to visual detail. Her being able to pick up an object and describe that object and just take that second to kind of step away, because she spends a lot of time on her computer typing and dealing with different clients and things like that. And her just being able to connect with an item around her visually was extremely and has been extremely helpful for her, because she doesn't have a lot of mental break in her day.
This coach training that you went through and this coaching that you're doing, it's called mindfulness coaching, and you've explained it really well. The short exercises are such a key point to that experience when we're helping clients. We also use tools that we'll talk about. People, when they're trying to understand what a mindfulness coach is, they want to know, how is it different than therapy? So the way that I explain that is therapy is very organic. The client is exploring different past situations and experiences and emotions. When you work with a mindfulness coach, there is that element, there is that time to have an organic conversation and explore those things. But we also incorporate these tools and exercises. You have used this tool that's called overthinking versus openness. And it's a really great tool to help clients see how their thinking can actually be causing them stress.
What I love about this overthinking versus openness and intentional thinking, as you were saying, it really helps people to sort of get clear about how they're contributing, their thinking patterns are contributing to their own stress. Also see where they're doing well. Where is there this openness in their thinking, where they're more cognizant of what's going on? It's about really rooting ourselves in a more grounded way of thinking about how we are processing various things that are happening to us. And I know when I have sat down to use this tool, I've realized even how certain things that are happening within the body, a limited awareness of what's going on there, overeating, unhealthy eating, how that's even connected to the ways that we are overthinking, how overthinking shows up in multiple ways in mentally, but also in the body.
Yeah, because if we are mentally drained, we often will go to unhealthy eating or overeating. There's definitely a connection. When I use this tool with clients, one of the things that almost always comes up is the client realizing that they don't have any boundaries on their thinking in general, or their overthinking. And so we talk about putting some boundaries on that, meaning we might designate a time of day that's overthinking free. And it's not that you're forced yourself not to overthink. It's just an invitation, during these hours of the day, I'm going to remind myself, oh, this is an overthinking free zone. I'm just going to listen to the birds outside for a moment. I don't need to go into all my problem solving and planning and projecting. Or they might designate a certain place to be overthinking free, like a certain road. We have this beautiful parkway near where I live. And so for a few years, I designated that parkway as a overthinking free zone, where I would remind myself to just be in the peace and notice the sounds, and also tune into your physical body, like you were mentioning. A really powerful tool. Still talking about Erica, I see here that she really liked the affirmation, right now it's like this. Do you remember her working with that and how that helped her?
Yes. So one of the things, as I was mentioning about her sort of daily experience, is the various levels of stress that she's under. And as someone that's also dealing with a physical health challenge around IBS, at times, she would think about how she wanted the situation to change. And when you focus so much on how you want it to change, you're not able to just be with the emotions in that moment. You're sort of pushing through to keep going, and you're not able to, or she wasn't able in some instances, to acknowledge her feelings about the difficulty and just how hard it was. And her being able to just give herself that grace to, I've also focused her on not only saying the words, but which are deeply important, but closing her eyes and putting her hand on her heart, just to give herself that additional self-compassion, and just saying, right now it's like this, and then whatever, fill in the blank for what that may be. Like, right now it's like this in terms of stress with work, right now it's like this physically, and just being able to sit in that present moment awareness without feeling like she has to just jump and just continue to keep going. Because in so many modern day work environments, the focus isn't on how you feel. It's just get through to the next task, and that's it. Like, people are not concerned. I was really trying to get her to really focus on prioritizing caring for herself, because you're not going to get it from the work environment, because other people don't know what you need. So it's about just advocating for yourself. And how do you do that? You're showing up. Self-care anchors, those things that that help to support you during the day, creating these spaces for care for yourself.
And I think that this affirmation, right now it's like this, which is part of the TSD program and part of mindfulness in general. It's an affirmation that mindfulness teachers have been using for years. But I think this affirmation, right now it's like this, is such a good segue to this self-care, because we kind of need to take a pause and notice that we are in difficulty, to cue us to provide ourselves with that self-care. And that right now it's like this. We say that because the right now designates that right now, yes, we're feeling this discomfort, we're feeling this anxiety, but in an hour, maybe we won't. Tomorrow, maybe we won't. We acknowledge the temporariness of it when we say right now. And then it's like this is the acceptance. Yes, yes, I'm in some emotional pain right now, or yes, I am in a stressful situation right now and I can feel it in my body. We're really acknowledging and accepting, moving into acceptance very quickly to what's going on. And those are so important for us to do on a regular basis to feel deserving and empowered to do those self-care anchors that you talk about. I love that term. Let's talk about Alice. Alice going through a divorce. She experienced overwhelm. I keep seeing this overwhelm repeat. Same with my clients. Like that's always coming up. So many of us are in overwhelm. She was also grieving the loss of her brother. You did some wonderful work with her. You also used the overthinking versus openness inventory, and which helped her really become aware of how her thinking was actually contributing to her stress. You talked about self-care anchors with her. It seems like that connection to the physical sensations was really important to her, that she didn't realize that her nervous system was as triggered as it was, and didn't realize that her anxiety was showing up in her body as much as it was. Can you speak to that?
Because Alice was or is still dealing with, moving through the divorce, and she has a young daughter who's a toddler, she really did not have a lot of time to just sort of sit and be in her body. And that's the experience, I think, of so many women, so many people who are also caregivers. You have to spend so much time focusing on this other person, whether it's your child or an older family member or close friend. And so in some ways, she was aware of what was happening in her body because of having lived with chronic illness. But in other ways, like sort of more subtle, simple ways, she wasn't. For instance, when we were focused on the overthinking versus the openness, she began to see some of her eating patterns, one in particular, where she wasn't eating enough, particularly on days when she has a part-time position, when she was out of the house and working part-time, and also sort of juggling that around caring for her daughter. She hadn't realized that, wow, there were like large blocks of time that she wasn't eating. And that this was then affecting her energy level. And she was even more tired and exhausted as she's dealing with all of this heavy emotional stuff. I think it's very easy for us to look for the obvious signs of overwhelm and burnout, or the obvious signs of physical health challenges, but to not be cognizant or as aware of some of those smaller ways that we are also hurting, and that's coming out in the body. The other thing too, I think, is when you're dealing with feelings of inadequacy or shame or guilt, that comes out in the way that you're treating your body, whether you're overeating, undereating, or it's sporadic. Mm-hmm. And so that was, one of the reasons why with her, I really tried to focus on specific short-term kind of things that she could do to help her begin to sort of reset her journey, because Alice is someone who is tuned into wellness practices, but because of going through divorce, dealing with chronic health challenge that pops up and sort of in spurts, and then her daughter, she really didn't have the time, and she wanted to be able to do it, I think, in a way that she'd done it before. But with well-being, we have to shift to where we are and accept that. That goes back to what you were saying about, the importance of right now, it's like this, that making that space for that awareness and acceptance, and also realizing impermanence, that the Buddhist concept of that, like, it may not be like this always, but if I can accept it in this moment, I'm able to calm down my mental field. I'm able to calm down in my body in terms of the gut and all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this acceptance of what was going on in Alice's body was really key to the process. I just want to share some of what she experienced with this mindfulness of physical sensations. She said, I was able to just focus on the sensations and it felt relieving, like I was okay. This is my body. This is what I'm experiencing. I want to say that again. It's so powerful. When she just sat and took a moment to notice what was going on in her body, she said it felt relieving, like it was okay, that this is my body, that this is what I'm experiencing. And she felt like the process was validating. She was validating her own body. She was validating her own emotional process when she did this, just to take that time to notice what was going on. And she also said, I see you, body. You are working hard for me. Again, that validation of and that gratitude for your own body. But it takes a practice of pausing and noticing what's going on in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how transformational that is? Just taking a breath, because we're in a culture that really pushes us to just keep moving through everything, and
Mm-hmm.
we're not processing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just taking that moment to process it, just like you said, to process it so it doesn't get stuck in us, so we can feel that flow, we can feel lighter, to let those experiences move through us. You have another client that I would love to touch on, and this is Jasmine. And Jasmine, again, suffering from stress, anxiety, disappointment, burnout, grief, frustration, overwhelm. I love how you come up with some of your original mindfulness activities and exercises. And in addition to that idea of these self-care anchors, you also came up with this process of stop, breathe, redirect. Please tell me about that and how that helped this client, Jasmine.
Sure. So she is someone who is an entrepreneur and a writer, creative, very ambitious, and deals with, this overwhelm, as you were talking about. Before you can even be in fully in this mindfulness state, we have to first stop, because there's a lot of things that are coming at you. So let's stop in the moment. Let's take a few deep breaths. I usually focus on 3, because that really helps to relax the body, especially if you don't have a lot of time. And then the redirection is, okay, what do I need in this moment? I think we're so used to saying, when people ask us how we are, just in a general sort of going about your day, we just say we're fine. And that's okay, because you can't go into everything with everyone. But are you asking yourself how you're doing? Because if you're saying I'm fine to yourself, then you're not acknowledging what's going on. So with the redirection, we worked on different examples. Do I need self-compassion in this moment? Do I need to go to a self-compassion statement? Do I need to lean into an affirmation? Do I need to lean into some more deep breathing? So just really I wanted her to give herself that opportunity to first acknowledge how important it is to just stop, and that she's worthy of stopping, right? And then from there, what do I need to pour into me? Because she spends a lot of time pouring out to other people, as an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a wife, as an artist. That takes a lot.
I can see one thing that you're really good at is helping your clients develop a practice of pausing and asking themselves, what do I need? What do I need in this moment? So important. And as I was looking through your notes on these 3 clients, I was reminded of the work that you and I did together, because as part of the coaching program, I personally coach you. And it's interesting how similar, right? What you and I worked on are so similar to some of what you worked on with your clients. And I think that's one of the differences between coaching and therapy. As coaches, we're really open about the fact that, we've been through these similar scenarios, difficulties, and I'm coaching you and helping you by showing you some of the things that really helped me. I'd love to hear what you think about that.
I love that. I think it's a great way to think about that difference. And it's not that it's good or bad, but it's just what it is. It definitely is different. I think that's the powerful thing as it relates to coaching. And a lot of these things that I share with others from what I've learned from you and TSD Mindfulness that has helped me. I've had to do that because I had for 5 years, my dad was living with a chronic illness, Parkinson's disease, and some other health challenges. And he passed away towards the end of last year. And I really needed something in addition to my spiritual life to help me. And that is what really pushed me to continue. Obviously, it's a continuous path, but to open myself to learning about these mindfulness practices. I have a daughter that has specialized health needs, and it can be very isolating. And I had to learn how to create these pockets of time for myself throughout the day to really pour back in to me so that I'm able to show up for my family in the way that is grounding and affirming and loving, because you can't really be to other people what you would like to be if you're not able to be that for yourself.
I love your use of the joy box. I just love how that can help people bring themselves back to the moment and consider what brings them joy. So please tell us how the joy box works.
Sure. So the joy box is a practice. You can take any small box that you would like to use, and you sit down and you write about things that bring you joy, and you just tear them off on little strips of paper and you put them in the joy box. And you can either do it if you want to connect with doing it as a daily practice. I do it as a weekly practice, and I'll just shake the box up and I'll pull out one of the strips of paper, and whatever the practice is that I've written that brings me joy, I focus on doing that during the week. For instance, writing is something that brings me joy, creative writing, journaling. So if I've pulled that out, then I focus on doing that throughout my week. The idea being to open ourselves to these pockets of joy that are all around us, because it can be so easy to get stuck in what is going, I don't even want to say totally wrong, but things that are happening that, you're not the craziest about. And you can really get sort of drawn to staying there as opposed to, well, what other things around me? I mean, it could even be something as simple as a cafe that you like to sit in that brings you joy. Take a couple of days a week and do that. And then notice how you feel in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. Notice that. I just feel like it's a good way to tap into awareness and mindfulness and joy.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. There's something that brings us joy that we get so busy and we forget about and we don't do. I mean, if you're thinking about going to the coffee shop, like you just mentioned, that's something that brings me joy. I love to do, but I never can find the time. But if that's what you pull out of your joy box that week and it says, go to the coffee shop, then you can really make an intention that, this week I'm going to go to the coffee shop at least once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. So I really love that. Another tool that you used, is called the shame and guilt inventory. And it's a pretty advanced tool. And you did really well using this tool with your clients. And I'd love to hear some of your experience with this inventory.
Sure. So I use this with Alice because she is carrying quite a bit of shame and guilt, one connected to what's happening in terms of her marriage, and then also around the passing of her brother who died by suicide. When you're dealing with those kind of intense feelings of shame or guilt, it shows up in a lot of different ways. It shows up in the body. It shows up in the way that you think other people think of you or perceive you. And so this was really helpful for her to see all of it laid out. Sarah, this is an amazing tool that you've created. And she was just blown away by it because she realized more clearly these devaluing statements that she was making to herself and how important it was, since this is something that she was saying to herself, how important it was for her to release in the same way. And we went through every single question you had here. And she also recognized the way that it was showing up for her physically in her body and emotionally. And the third way, like I was just saying about like verbally, like she realized the things that she was saying to herself and the ways that internalizing those statements was showing up for her.
And that's what happens, right? Is we have this shame, and shame is anytime we put ourselves down in any way. It might be actual words that we're saying in our mind. We might not always experience it completely verbally. It might be this really physical. We just feel it in our bodies, or it might be an emotion, emotion of inferiority, for example, or it might be a combination of these. And so this tool helps someone go through the different aspects of life that might be triggering this type of devaluing, and then creating a releasing statement. And so a releasing statement is something that's self-compassionate, that reverses the devaluing statement, that makes it not true, that corrects it. Working with a professional to help you come up with those, and using your mindfulness to know when you're going through those shame cycles to use your releasing statement can be really life-changing. Also, being a woman of color, would like to talk to you about racial trauma. Anyone that works in the mental health field knows the relevance of racial trauma. It happens on so many levels. And so I'd like to hear your perspectives on racial trauma in general, and then also how this work could be healing for people who have endured racial trauma.
As a woman of color, and then also as a woman of color, that one of the other areas that I work in is activism, online activism through the podcast that I do with my mom, Pray With Our Feet. There are so many ways that this shows up for marginalized people when you go online and you see negative comments or videos where people are berating a different ethnic group, when we see things in the news around police violence, state violence, violence in schools that are directed towards students of color. And it's extremely heavy. The recent attack and murder of Tyree Nichols, the continuous assault of these images over and over and over again. It's very, very difficult. And it shows up in the body. It shows up in, like, if there's a police car in back of me, and I've never been in trouble with the law or anything like that, but my body just automatically tenses up and tightens up. Mm-hmm. And because I don't know what could happen, even though I have no record and, all these things. So carrying these various feelings around with you a lot, and you're often triggered. And it's really the core way that mindfulness can help us is the awareness of what's happening in the body, in the mind, in the spirit, and then being able to redirect to tools that can help you. Whether that is sitting with the practice of mindful breathing, or connecting to how does it feel in your gut? How does it feel? What are the sensations there? And how can you begin to soothe those with affirmations that you're saying to yourself? It is extremely exhausting because it's a cycle. Mm. And you're seeing the same cycle over and over again. And it feels oftentimes like I'm speaking out or I'm showing up in this way or that way, and it's not shifting. And I think it's also important for people who are dealing with racial trauma to give themselves a break from feeling like they have to look at all of it all of the time. Because I know that's a practice that I have leaned into, and even more so in studying with you, really understanding how this energy shows up in the body.
Any type of trauma is going to get your brain cranking. You're anticipating, you're projecting, playing out scenarios. And yes, that's mentally draining. And then that affects your physical body. So I think that idea of being able to have a practice that gives you some reprieve, some break from that during the day is wonderful. And self-compassion too. Any type of trauma, a self-compassion practice is going to be key to healing. And before we go, I'd love to hear more about your activism and your wellness entrepreneur projects that you're working on.
Pray with Our Feet is a podcast and also an online community that I started, and I brought my mom in on the podcast. And it focuses on progressive Christian faith and social justice, the intersection of both of those. Because if we're living as people of faith and leaning into a consciousness that's rooted in Christ, then we show up in the world in a way to serve other people, to be in beloved community. So a lot of the areas that we focus on in terms of activism and advocacy relate to racial justice, economic inequality, climate justice, and really either lifting up petitions that other organizations have out there. We do Instagram live talks. I have something called Move It Forward Monday that I partnered with a friend of mine on, who runs a magazine that lifts up the voices of women of color. And so each month we have different people on that are making a difference in their community, to encourage the people that follow both of us that, hey, these are ways, everyday ways that you can show up or you can support this organization. Because it does get overwhelming when there's so much, about so much that's going on in the world, but we want to really see conversation as a way to spark change, and not sort of, we just talk about it and that's it. It's like, okay, let's put our feet on the ground and actually do these things, take these actions, however that looks for you. And it looks different for everyone. So that's Pray with Our Feet. We're in our 4th season. And towards the end of last year, we were notified that on FeedSpot, they ranked different podcasts, and we were ranked as one of the top 30 progressive Christian podcasts. So I'm really excited about that work that I've been able to do with my mom. And then in terms of wellness entrepreneurship, I'm launching this spring When Motherhood Looks Different, which is a community-based organization to help moms that are raising kids with specialized health needs or learning differences, or moms who have their own chronic health challenges. And so their way that they experience motherhood is very different from how other moms do experience it. And it can be extremely isolating and feel disempowering. But When Motherhood Looks Different is here to say, you're not alone, that we are with you in terms of providing resources around mindfulness through coaching. Thank you, Sarah, for all you taught me. I'll be able to offer that as one of the services. One event that I'm going to launch when we begin When Motherhood Looks Different is Wounds Become Wings, which is it's a line from a poem that I wrote about my journey with my daughter. And the idea being that even the most challenging circumstances that we go through, we still can rise. We still can flow and move through those experiences, and they can bring about transformation. So it'll be like a bi-monthly journaling workshop, Wounds Become Wings. And each month we'll have a different theme, but we want to focus on writing as a tool for healing.
You are such an inspiration. You have these amazing ideas that are just so helpful to others, and you manifest them, you create them, and you do them. And all of the those of us listening, I'm sure, are so inspired by your work. If people want to listen to your podcast, Pray with Our Feet, is that found on any podcast app, or do they need to go to your website?
So it's on the website, it's on Apple, Spotify, everywhere where you stream podcasts. And our website is just really simple. It's praywithourfeet.org. When Motherhood Looks Different, we're on Instagram right now, and it's at When Motherhood Looks Different. You can find us there. And in our bio, there's a link. You'll see it. And that's where you can sign up to be notified when the website goes live this spring.
This is Emelda De Coteau, and you've heard about her amazing work. Please go check out her content on Instagram and her podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for all that you have taught me and are teaching me. I am so blessed to have found your program, particularly at the point in my life when it was towards the end of my dad's passing. It's really helped me to be able to give myself that space to sit with the grief. And also, it's helping me to bless so many other people. So thank you for the amazing work that you do every day to help so many people.
No, you're very welcome, E. The Aware Mind podcast is a TSD Mindfulness production. Please check out our show notes for upcoming events and links to additional resources. Please visit our website at tsdmind.org. That is T as in tame, S as in soothe, D as in dwell, mind as in mindfulness.org. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at TSD_mindfulness.